next comes a very important set of updates on the Orsolya Gaal murder case. And what I revealed there, just in this short update alone, is going to have you thinking and really questioning once and for all whether we could simply use the words and terms conspiracy when describing the Orsolya Gaal case. That and much more up next. Thank you. Right here, JTC channel. Or on the Orsolya Gaal murder case, as we explore this a little bit more in depth. The video won't be that long, but it will be exploring some very important points in the Orsolya Gaal murder. The husband of murdered Queen's mother, mother of two, claims that he received a text message accusing his wife of putting the sender in jail years ago. It has just been reported. So in other words, the husband of Orsolya Gaal, who is apparently this man named Howard Klein, who would allegedly go on these trips, and also he was seen, interestingly enough, in the mountains, and was also physically seen in Canada during the time William Jones was out going to these different areas. And that can't be a coincidence. So we will get to that. Orsolya Gaal's body was discovered Saturday morning in a duffel bag. So the husband of slain Queen's mother claims that he received an ominous text message. And this was before anything to do with the murder. I think this might have been weeks before. Some of these actual text messages came months before this murder ended up occurring, interestingly. This is the first time this has really been exposed, so I definitely desire you guys to get this video out, get it to the general public. Let's get a lot more eyes on this case. According to a source who spoke to Pix 11, 51-year-old Orsolya Gaal's husband states he received a text message after she was killed from an unknown number. The sender allegedly accused her of sending him to prison a few years back and stated, "I am back." He also allegedly threatened to kill the entire family if the police are called at all. Howard Klein claims that he was in Portland, Oregon at the time of his wife's death, and these text messages visiting colleges with the couple's 17-year-old son started coming in on his phone. The mother of two is stated to have told the couple's 13-year-old son, believed to be home at the time, none the wiser, that she was heading out to watch a show that Friday. However, according to the same WPIX report that came in not long after, she met up with a man instead of doing that. Her alleged killer has not been identified by police. According to the New York Post, Howard Klein is the founder of a boutique financial firm, and he told the paper Saturday that he was at an actual airport in the middle of this terrible experience. So in the middle of this time when his wife is allegedly being stalked and could potentially be murdered, where is Howard Klein at? That's correct. Howard Klein is out on a little bit of a vacation, it almost seems like. Which is just, for reference, that is quite unusual. I'm not saying that he's involved necessarily right now. I am pointing out, however, the facts point to the reality that this is very unusual, and you do not see that in missing person cases. That's what needs to be mentioned here. Police believe the murderer killed Gaal in the basement of her home and put her body in a duffel bag. Disturbing surveillance footage captured someone appearing to drag a duffel bag on the street. And let's remember, folks, they have now confirmed there was at least 2 specific cameras monitoring this crime scene. And Howard Klein knew about both of these cameras, and they allegedly cover both entrances because one of the entrances to the crime scene happens to be through the basement, apparently. But at the time that the murder actually occurred, one of these cameras allegedly was turned off. And that right there is really raising some questions, rightfully so, too. According to multiple reports, investigators had questioned the couple's 13-year-old son, Leo, who was thought to be home at the time. No one was charged with the crime, and the police investigation is ongoing. So there is something that does not, just doesn't add up about the fact that he's inattentive. He's not really cognizant of everything that's going on, and he is apparently on vacation, checking out various colleges at the exact time that his wife is being stalked and could potentially be murdered. So all I'm pointing out here is there is something about Howard Klein's original story that does not add up or equate to the normal responsibilities and the normal actions of what a husband would be engaged with, okay? I'm not sure if I would say that Howard Klein is directly involved, but there are some oddities that have come up about this which make me suspect that he knew a lot more about Orsolya Gaal's potential murder than he's let on. Because it says, of course, in the same report, he went on to claim to the Post, there are concerns about our safety. And that's all I mean. If he knew because of the text messages, and also when he was in Canada on vacation, and also when he went to the mountains in New York and so on, if he knew someone was stalking them and had deliberately sent certain text messages also to him, right? Saying that he was very mad for being put in prison several years ago by Miss Orsolya Gaal. If he knew these things, and evidence is coming out now which declaratively states that he knew these things, then how can you explain Howard Klein's involvement? Was he truly innocent? I don't know. I'm starting to lean, however, on the side of him certainly not being innocent, and that there is more to this story. So thank you again for getting this out and getting it out there, to the general audience as well. Thank you. Forest Hills, New York. Who is Howard Klein, Orsolya Gaal's official husband? Orsolya Gaal's husband and son are wanted for questioning in her homicide. However, it is unclear whether the two men were connected to each other or not. Howard Klein, Orsolya Gaal's husband, has been suspected early on to be involved. Howard Klein was traveling with her 17-year-old son when Gaal was officially murdered. While she was on the road, she sent an interesting message on Twitter thanking him for protecting her 17-year-old son. She was killed less than half a mile from her home in Queens, New York. The suspect then stuffed her body into a duffel bag and dragged it through the neighborhood across multiple streets. Police then followed the blood trail to Gaal's family home. The 13-year-old son of the victim told police that his mother was not home when the incident occurs. Police are now investigating whether a criminal gang is responsible. Howard Klein's numerous social media postings. Howard Klein is a man of mystery who has been named as a person of interest in the murder of his estranged wife, Orsolya Gaal. Police state that Gaal, age 51, was dragged more than half a mile by a man with a hockey duffel bag at the exact time she was killed. The murder victim's 13-year-old son Leo was questioned, but was eventually released without incident. Although police are investigating whether Klein was the one who killed her, there is no reason to believe that the two were involved as yet. A man who officially texted Howard Klein about Osolya Gaal's murder stated that he was getting revenge on Gaal for sending him to prison more than 2 years ago. This is the part that really comes to me and starts making me question the story. It's like, what does Forest Hills police know? What do they really truly know about this, and what aren't we being told is exactly right. Police state that Gaal's killer was likely a man named Howard Klein. So they even suspected that her husband, Howard Klein, the financial advisor, was involved. They originally suspected that he was directly a part of this. And I would just simply say that that is interesting, nothing more, because, of course, Howard Klein had gone on these interesting trips, and he also knew Andrew Jones, apparently, which that definitely makes the plot thicken just a little bit. The killer left a trail of blood leading back to Gaal's Forest Hills home, where she had lived with her 13-year-old son, away from the commotion of traffic. His social media account indicated that he was from Long Island, and he was a lithium trader. But it was his connection. But what is his connection to Orsolya Gaal? It seems that her disappearance was not a complete sham, and that he had not been involved in any crime since the time that is alleged. The police were able to find the duffel bag by following the trail of blood, and they have been trying to find out who was behind the murder. And this is what I mean, folks. I guarantee right now there is no one talking about the fact that this mysterious stranger had sent multiple text messages to Gaal's husband, talking about the ways that he wished to dispose of her body, and also discussing the fact that he wanted revenge on her for going to prison 2 years ago. And these are no small feats. These are very, very glaring omissions that have been left out of all the reports. And so we are going to explore this just a bit. Thank you for continuing to spread the word on this important case. Now, this is where things truly start to get interesting. So I managed to uncover Howard Klein's private LinkedIn account. He's a founder and partner for RK Equity Firm of New York, New York, not Queens. He went to the Columbia Business School of Applied Science. But what's really interesting, it's going to surprise some people, is he knows Osolya Gaal's brother very, very well. And Stephen Gaal is the managing partner and co-founder for what's known as Skyworks Holdings, LLC. That is a mainstream kind of consulting firm for construction companies. And some of the companies that Stephen Gaal allegedly works with, of course, are in Quebec, Canada, which should be no surprise. And another person who's involved is, of course, now Andrew Jones, because he lives directly in Quebec, Canada. So thank you again. This is certainly the first time this exclusive information is being unveiled. Be certain to get it out far and wide, and let's get it to the general public and the mass audience as well. There's some very important details that are going to be going over here. and I'm going over these very carefully. Thank you. It's just a very important short update that will be included in this video. It's proof and evidence that Gaal Communications Incorporated, which was originally run and held by one of the shareholders, Stephen Gaal, was dissolved officially just a few months ago. Gaal Communications Incorporated, and confirms it for the first time on live broadcast, had been incorporated August 29th, 1997, and existed officially in the area of Vaudreuil, Dorion, Quebec, Canada. That's very close to one of Howard Klein's interesting companies and associations. Thank you. That will be all here. New York. The manhunt for the suspect responsible for killing slain mother Orsolya Gaal intensified on Tuesday when police lined the neighborhood streets with wanted posters, and a family electrician in this case, described her house as being outfitted with at least 2 cameras, including a separate entrance to the finished basement itself.
Slain NYC mom Osolya Gaal's home at separate basement entrance, family electrician says. The manhunt for the person who killed Queen's mom Osolya Gaal intensified on Tuesday when police lined the neighborhood streets with wanted posters, and a family electrician described the house as being outfitted with cameras and a separate entrance to the finished basement. New York. The manhunt for the person who killed Queen's mom Osolya Gaal intensified on Tuesday when police lined the neighborhood streets with wanted posters, and a family electrician described her house as being outfitted with cameras and a separate entrance to the finished basement. At least one unmarked police vehicle said stationed outside of Gaal's family's Forest Hills home on Tuesday, as other investigators came and went throughout the day. The manhunt for the 51-year-old mother of two's killer continued 3 days after her remains were discovered inside a duffel bag less than a mile from her Juneau Street home.
So, and when I look at this, there's something about it that starts to feel a little bit fishy, okay? And I think that that's an appropriate response to have. The family's residence is located on a street that is riddled with what are known as doorbell cameras. At least 7 are on the interior of the family's block alone. And the home security system, likely most of the time by Brink Security, or ADT, made it hard for any suspect to evade police scrutiny for long. The family electrician, Arjuna Jack, age 30, stated Gaal's house was outfitted with a camera surveillance system that was very sophisticated by electrician standards. Gaal lived in the $2.2 million 5-bedroom Tudor style house with her husband, financial advisory firm founder Howard Klein, as well as their 2 children. Photos of the shattered family. Jack had described Gaal as a very happy, jolly person all the time. He said that Howard Klein, age 53, worked from an office in his New York home, and the house had a separate door that leads either down to the basement or up into the separated kitchen. The basement consists of a laundry room, apparently, and what was once the kids' playroom. Police received the call at 8:10 a.m. Saturday, after the report of a suspicious bag with blood on it was reported at the Jackie Robinson Parkway. According to WPIX, however, Howard Klein, who founded the firm RK Equity, received a chilling text message from someone who warned, in part, "Your wife sent me to prison many years ago when you were living near Austin Street of Forest Hills. I am officially back. Do not call the police or I will kill your entire family." So he received these text messages, and then for some reason he decided to not come forward with this information. For whatever reason that is. And that information was not released to the public for quite a while. There's a UPS truck on that street, interestingly enough. The New York City office of the chief medical examiner ruled Monday that Gaal's death was a homicide caused by a sharp, blunt force injury. According to the New York Post, investigators believe Gaal's lifeless body was moved into the basement early on before it was removed from the area. Authorities handcuffed and questioned her 13-year-old son, who was believed to have been home at the time of the stabbing, but then police released him into custody of an unidentified adult relative. Klein was with the couple's older son, the other son, in other words, on the West Coast, but told the Post he was returning home following the terrible news. Klein did not respond to Fox News' digital request for comment. The NYPD is still searching for Gaal's chilling killer, but surveillance footage from around 4:30 a.m. Saturday appears to show a shadowed figure pulling a duffel bag along the sidewalk, sources confirm. Fox News was at the scene Monday night when police were seen at the home combing through a room on the second floor. Multiple investigators were seen leaving with what appeared to have been official state's evidence. The NYPD is searching for Gaal's killer and denied reports on Tuesday that the investigators had identified a person of interest. So, the more that I look at this, I understandably demand to have answers. I would like to know why Howard Klein consulted with a construction firm. I would like to know why Howard Klein made certain trips out of state as well. And I would love to know, and I'm sure everybody would love to know because they have not known about this information. I would love to know why Howard Klein did not report, for example, to detectives or to a local newspaper that he had received multiple text messages, not just one, but more than several, from a strange man who stated that Orsolya Gaal had put him in prison several years back and that he was back to take her out. I think everybody, though, at this point, would love to start having answers to these very important questions. So thank you once again. Please continue to get this story out there far and wide, because together we can solve this case. Thank you. This is just a very brief video. It's about 1 minute long, showing you the area of the Forest Hills townhomes of Forest Hills at Forest Hills Park. This would be the area where Osolya Gaal's home, in fact, was. And you can see they have two cameras each time. It will show one by the floodlights, and the other will always be like near the back entrance, near the basement. Now, in order for the killer to have accomplished this feat so easily, they would have had to have gotten past both cameras and essentially came directly through the basement and then be shown on the sidewalk not more than 40 seconds later. Now you look at that and examine it again and tell me that it makes any kind of sense, because I can't make any sense of it unless, of course, Klein indeed had more to do with this than we knew. And the Corona Park where where Bonola would meet Gaal has the same kind of issue. Two cameras. You can't have one without the other camera. Thank you. So then I managed to find something very interesting here. Howard J. Klein and Associates of Green Acres City, Florida, is a law firm, and they are also a very famous law firm with the contract for a construction company, which is located in Quebec, Canada. So this being Howard Klein's cousin, I decided to go to the address over there in Quebec, Canada, where they're doing different consultations with companies. This is apparently what pops up immediately. Howard Klein and Associates. And this essentially may, in fact, be Howard Klein of Queens, New York's direct brother, also associated with Michael Gibbons and similar. And also it has been alleged on some websites that this may in fact be the exact same Howard Klein of Queens, New York in specific, and he was just touching up some of his photos. Now, I don't know which of those allegations are true. I feel it's much, much more likely at this point that it is indeed Howard Klein's cousin. However, the circumstances surrounding what's going on here in Quebec, Canada, cannot be underscored by any means now. And people were wondering, how is it that I could be mistrusting of Mr. Howard Klein in that way? He did some unusual things, but he couldn't possibly be involved in certain things. Well, if you will believe it, just a month or so before Orsolya Gaal disappeared, a Virginia physician assistant, this is what it says, age 40, Virginia physician assistant, was arrested after traveling across 3 states to stalk his ex-girlfriend, age 29, for many days before stabbing and mutilating her corpse in a grisly killing. Jacob L. Klein, that's correct, the cousin, nonetheless, of Howard Klein, a 40-year-old physician assistant from Virginia state, is charged in the homicide of a 35-year-old Philip L. Rabati from New Scotland, New York. Now keep in mind, New Scotland, New York is only about 10 minutes or less from Queens, New York. 3 days prior to the alleged homicide, Klein had stalked her to the home and stalked Rabati as well, shared with Klein's 29-year-old ex-girlfriend, Alana Z. Radine. After she left for work last Wednesday, Mr. Jacob Klein then approached the front door at the home and allegedly stabbed Rabati until he was dead, before binding his body with special cords. It was discovered after that he failed to show up for work that Jacob Klein then fled back to Virginia State and left New York, where he was apprehended by police. Jacob L. Klein, a 40-year-old physician assistant from Virginia State, is charged with second-degree murder. Jacob L. Klein, age 40, was arrested and arraigned in Virginia on Friday and is now in federal custody, but is expected to return to New Scotland, New York, to face new charges of second-degree murder. Klein is accused of murdering 35-year-old Philip L. Rabati, who was married to Klein's ex, Alana Z. Radine. Rabati had been bound and with multiple stab wounds and mutilation to a corpse at his home in New Scotland, near the state's capital of Albany. Albany County Sheriff Craig Apple stated the authorities and loved ones found Rabati during a routine welfare check after he failed to show up for work at the St. Peter's Hospital. So this guy worked in the medical field. And of course, because of good old Jacob Klein, happens to be a actual serial killer, he never showed up for work ever again. So now you can see certainly why I have just really started to be very distrusting of this story concocted around Mr. Howard Klein. His family are definitely the very opposite of what you would be considering good, wholesome people, number one. And number two, there are far too many shady implications, is what I will call it, as it concerns Klein's frequent trips out of the country and even to Canada as well as the fact that the family apparently is very well known in Quebec City, Canada, and Andrew Jones lives in Quebec City, Canada. And one other thing that has gotten me to the point of being distrustful of Mr. Klein's story. When I went here and I looked up Forest Hills Realtors, I found Jones again. This time, it was one of Andrew Jones' nephews, apparently, who's likewise named Andrew Jones for some other specific reason, who has been taking care of real estate for the past 20 years or so in the area of Brentwood, Tennessee, believe it or not, and similar areas outside of Nashville. And some of the properties that he sold also dealt with Forest Hills on the East Coast. So, once again, it goes back to the age-old adage, is how I look at it. There is more to the crime than meets the eye, you know. What a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive. Now, you can take this for what you may for now, but I now firmly believe that it's very possible a ring was involved in Orsolya Gaal's official murder. And that same ring has been stalking other victims across various parts of the East Coast. And there must be answers, finally, to these very troubling questions, such as the text messages that deliberately made heinous threats, which Howard Klein declined to say really any public comment about for much of the time, and similar key issues around some of these interesting excursions outside of New York and outside of New York State. So thank you again. I appreciate you getting this and continuing to furnish it far and wide so that it reaches the general public and the mass audience so we can start to determine once and for all what was truly, indeed, going on here, right here on JTC Channel.